I was talking about the flat Earth and the structures of the universe with my friend the other day, and it made me want to revive this book and show you all this book that I came across, Paradise Found, The Cradle of the Human Race at the North Pole, which has an amazing collection of details and different interesting collections of things throughout time that deal with there being life at one point in civilizations and everything beyond the poles that we are not being told about and that we are constantly lied about. And this flat earth, this discussion is so important because it just tells how much they are lying about us. And if you honestly trust the news about anything, and you shouldn't at any point at all, ever, then you should not trust them about the structure of the universe or any of this stuff. It's all designed to make us convinced we're on a prison rather than being in some beautiful place. But take a look at all these different chapters in this book. They go through several different methods like paleontological records, a cradle of the race in Chinese thought and ancient Japanese thought and ancient cosmology and mythical geography, the mountain of the world, Akkadian, Assyrian, Babylonian. There's so many different things in this book. It's absolutely a treasure trove of incredible things to just look at and find all different kinds of ancient thoughts on Mount Meru, the Isles of Kronos, the Golden Age, like all these things I'd never even heard of before, from the Native Americans, Eden Day, the Eden Zenith, the Navel of the Earth. It doesn't stop. You guys all have to check out this book because I will be going back to it more and more in the future. It's just absolutely astounding. Just literally take a look at these freaking sections, and the book is packed with them. So I'll include the link below. Definitely take a look. There's a lot to think about in this topic, and it's so important. It really, really is, because it relates to everything. They lie to us about so much. Why do they keep this stuff hidden? Why? What are they truly hiding about our structure? And why are they so shameful in trying to convince us and to shame hollow earthers and flat earthers and give them terrible reputations and trick them into doing things and to try and embarrass them? And it's like have these shills that promote this fake nonsense. It's all such an elaborate scheme to hide this, and it's been going on for way too long. So this book had some illustrations. These ones are pretty nice about the different descriptions. And look at Tartarus right in the center, Tartaros. There is a lot. I'm going to dive deeper into Tartarus and different thoughts about the ancients in Tartarus in coming videos. But I love this image. Very nice. I might try to draw something like that as I get a better grasp of the whole situation and mythology behind it all. And this book can definitely help. So these are some of the ways: mathematical, astronomical, physiographical, prehistoric climatology, paleontological, botany, zoology, all of this stuff. So really take a look at this book. It describes its methods. It's very thorough in trying to basically prove that there is something below, beyond, maybe below, everywhere, beyond our little tiny prison of a mind-controlled propaganda universe. So I wanted to read a lot of these sections. Here we go. You're going to love these, you guys. I picked out some interesting parts, and I think you will really like them. And I'm going to put some art in there too, so enjoy. You shall understand that no mortal may approach to that paradise. For by land no man may go, for wild beasts that are in the deserts, and for the high mountains and great huge rocks that no man may pass by, for the dark places that are there. And by the rivers may no man go, for the water runs so roughly and so sharply, because it comes down so outrageously from the high places above, that it runs in so great waves that no ship may row or sail against it. And the water roars so, and makes so huge a noise and so great a tempest, that no man may hear another in the ship, though he cried with all the might he could. Many great lords have essayed with great will many times to pass by those rivers towards paradise with full great companies, but they might not speed in their voyage, and many died for weariness of rowing against the strong waves, and many of them became blind, and many deaf from the noise of the water, and some perished and were lost in the waves, so that no mortal man may approach to that place without the special grace of God. Sir John de Mandeville. And remember the perspective of all of these ancient and older, probably geniuses, and compare that to the people that tell you otherwise on TV and Bill Nye the Science Guys and Neil deGrasse Tyson's. And remember to question all of them. So here we go. It follows that man, issuing from a mother region, still undetermined but which a number of considerations indicate to have been in the north, has radiated in several directions, that his migrations have been constantly from north to south. Chapter 2. The Testimony of Astronomical Geography. The nights are never so dark at the pole as in other regions, for the moon and stars seem to possess twice as much light and effulgence. In addition, there is a continuous light in the north, the varied shades and play of which are amongst the strangest phenomena of nature. Rombuson's Astronomy. The fact which gives the phenomenon of the polar aurora its greatest importance is that the earth becomes self-luminous. That, besides the light which as a planet it receives from the central body, it shows a capability of sustaining a luminous process proper to itself. Humboldt, and we all have discovered that we know the moon and sun are both their own luminousness. Here we go. A lately published report speaking of the last winter at one of these circumpolar stations of the far north says, aurora have been seen here during the winter almost every night, and during all weathers. The auroral forms or types which have appeared have been those generally known from the grand corona to the modest, pulsating little luminous cloud. But as a characteristic feature attending them all, I must mention the absence of stability in the types. Thus only on a few occasions has there been an opportunity to watch the stationary arc, but in general the aurora have represented wafting draperies and shining streamers with ever-changing position and intensity. A.S. Steen, the Norwegian Circumpolar Station, in October i883. The electrical discharges which take place in the polar regions between the positive electricity of the atmosphere and the negative electricity of the earth are the essential and unique cause of the formation of the polar light, was in the Arctic Manual. And then another one, Mr. Lemstron concluded that an electric discharge which could only be seen by means of the spectroscope was taking place on the surface of the ground all around him, and that from a distance it would appear as a faint display of aurora, a display like the phenomena of pale and flaming light which is sometimes seen on the top of the Spitzbergen Mountains. Again, the Arctic Manual. So a lot of different texts, and they keep going. Here we go. Enough, however, has been said for our purpose. Whoever seeks as a probable location for paradise the heavenliest spot on earth with respect to light and darkness, and with respect to celestial scenery, must be content to seek it at the Arctic Pole. Here is the true city of the sun. Here is the one and only spot on earth respecting which it would seem as if the Creator had said, as of his own heavenly residence, there shall be no night there. I love that. I'm not sure exactly who wrote it, but it's in this book. It may tell. Chapter 3, The Testimony of Physiographical Geology. An extensive continent occupied this portion of the globe when these strata were deposited. Baron Nordenskjold. There was definitely civilizations all over the place up there. Later in the same book, Mr. Wallace incidentally shows that the facts of Arctic paleontology call for the supposition of a primitive Eocene continent in the highest latitudes, a continent which no longer exists. His language is the rich and varied fauna which inhabited Europe at the dawn of the Tertiary period, as shown by the abundant remains of mammalia wherever suitable deposits of the Eocene age have been discovered, proves that an extensive Paleoarctic continent then existed. Another most eminent authority in Arctic paleontology, the late Professor Heer of Zurich, fully 15 years ago arrived at and published the conclusion that the facts presented in the Arctic fossils plainly point to the existence in Miocene time of a no longer existing polar continent. Fuller reference to his views will be made in our next chapter. On another and more lithological line of evidence, Baron Nordenskjold, the eminent Arctic explorer, has arrived at the same conclusion. Speaking of certain rock strata north of the 69th degree of north latitude, he says, an extensive continent occupied this portion of the globe when these strata were deposited. Elsewhere he speaks of this ancient polar continent as something already accepted and universally understood among scientific men. They later go on to say, it is by no means necessary to commit ourselves to any of these theories of deluges or to seek still other explanations of the recognized subsidence of the basin now occupied by the Arctic Ocean. Enough for the present that upon the authority of eminent physiographic geologists we have shown these 5 things. 1. That the present distribution of land and water within the Arctic Circle is, geologically speaking, of very recent origin. 2. That the Paleozoic data of the highest explored latitudes demand for their explanation the hypothesis of an extensive circumpolar continent in Miocene time. 3. That lithological authorities affirm that such a continent existed. 4. That physical geography has reached the conclusion that the known islands of the Arctic Ocean, such as Nova Zembla and the Spitsbergen, are simply mountain tops still remaining above the surface of the sea, which have come in and covered up the primeval continent to which they belonged. 5. And finally, that the problem of the process by which this grand catastrophe was brought about is now sporadically engaging the thoughts of terrestrial physicists and geologists. And it still is today. And this book is from the 1800s, the late 1800s, compiled with writings from all over time. And we're still thinking about it. We're still trying to figure this out. And we have the tech to be able to do it and to be able to discover it with our own eyes, with camera, with proof, with just the tech, the modes of transportation to do it, and no one is. And if they are, they're not telling us. Chapter 4, The Testimony of Prehistoric Climatology. This guy says, A.R. Wallace in 1880, i885 says, one of the most startling and important of the scientific discoveries of the last 20 years has been that of the relics of a luxuriant Miocene flora in various parts of the Arctic regions. It is a discovery which was totally unexpected, and it is even now considered by many men of science to be completely unintelligible, but it is so thoroughly established, and it has such an important bearing on the subjects we are discussing in the present volume, that it is necessary to lay a tolerably complete outline of the facts before our readers. And that's the way it has to be. And keep it going. We have no use here for mere fancy sketches like the following, which appeared on the 10th of May, i884, in the Norwood Review and Crystal Palace Reporter, in which books looks very much like an unacknowledged loan from Captain Hall of Arctic fame. Quote, we do not admit that there is ice up to the pole. No one has been nearer that point than 464 miles. Once inside the great ice barrier, a new world breaks upon the explorer. A climate first mild like that of England, and afterwards balmy as that of the Greek Isles, awaits the hardy adventurer who first beholds those wonderful shores. Wonderful indeed, for he will be greeted by a branch of the human race, cut off from the rest of humanity by that change of climate which came over northern Europe about 2,000 years ago, but surrounded by a profusion of life bewildering in the extreme. Speculations or fancies of this sort have ever clustered about this mysterious region of the pole. As we shall hereafter see, they abounded in remote antiquity. Even the singular fancy known to the public as Sim's Hole antedates Sim's and may be found in much more attractive form in Klopstock's Messiah. That's from i854. And these things, these people, these antiquity, they have tons of stories about these areas. They probably all were eviscerated, all those books burned, all those libraries destroyed in this time in between. And it's so easy for them to do that, and they would want all this gone so they can convince us we're in this prison and we're here alone. Meanwhile, they fly wherever they want, and we know they do, and it sucks. We need to find out the truth, because they shouldn't know it. They don't deserve it. We do. The Testimony of Paleontological Botany. It is now an established conclusion that the great aggressive faunas and flora of the continents have originated in the north, some of them within the Arctic Circle. Principal Dawson, I883. Another one says, but the study of paleontological botany has just conducted to a new and entirely unanticipated result. The best authorities in this science, both in Europe and America, have lately reached the conclusion that all the floral types and forms revealed in the oldest fossils of the earth originated in the region of the North Pole and then spread first over the northern and then over the southern hemisphere, proceeding from north to south. This is a conception of the origin and development of the vegetable world, which but a few years ago no scientific man had dreamed of, and which to many intelligent readers of these pages will be entirely new. Its profound interest as related to the present discussion will at once be seen. And if plants originated from there and started growing down south, and that's the origin, the Eden, then wouldn't life and animals and humans there too? And wouldn't they still be there? Wouldn't that's where the control be, most likely? The true government of all of this? Maybe? The true religion as well? Who knows? The Testimony of Paleontological zoology. All the evidence at our command points to the northern hemisphere as the birthplace of the class Mammalia, and probably of all the orders. Alfred Russel Wallace. You won't be taught that in school. You'll be taught the Earth is round and very small. And in mathematics, that don't make sense. As long ago as 1876, i876, Mr. Alfred Russel Wallace wrote, all the chief types of animal life appear to have originated in the great north, temperate or northern continents, while the southern continents have been more or less completely isolated during long periods, both from the northern continent and from each other. And again, speaking of mammalia, he said, all the evidence at our command points to the northern hemisphere as the birthplace of the class, and probably of all the orders. From all the facts but one conclusion is possible, and that is that like as the Arctic Pole as the mother region of all plants, so it is the mother region of all animals, the region where in the beginning God created every beast of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth on the earth after his kind. And this is the conclusion now being reached and announced by all comparative zoologists who busy themselves with the problem of the origin and prehistoric distribution of the animal world. But to believe that Professor Heer's Miocene Arctic continent was the cradle of all floral types and the cradle of all faunal forms, and yet deny that it was also the cradle of the human race, is what few philosophical minds are likely long to do. And yep, little did they know how badly they'd eradicate all of this. And conclusion of part third, we must now be prepared to admit that God can plant an Eden even in Spitsbergen, that the present state of the world is by no means the best possible in relation to climate and vegetation, that there have been and might be again conditions which could convert the ice-clad Arctic regions into blooming paradises. Principal J.W. Dawson. And they already could be those paradises. They really could be. Thus, the Arctic zone, which was earliest in cooling down to the first and highest heat degree in the great life gamut, was also first to become fertile, first to bear life, and first to send forth her progeny over the earth. So too, in obedience to the universal order of things, she was first to reach maturity, first to pass all the subdivisions of life-bearing climate, and finally the lowest heat degree in the great life range, and so the first to reach sterility, old age, degeneration, and death. And now cold and lifeless, wrapped in her snowy winding sheet, the once fair mother of us all rests in the frozen embrace of an ice-bound and everlasting sepulchre. Or so they say. Could be beautiful up there. We don't know, because they lie so much. But this picture is very important. So to illustrate this conception of the world, let the two circles of the diagram, which constitutes the frontispiece of this work, represent respectively the Earth's sphere and the outermost of the revolving starry spheres. A is the north pole of the heavens, so placed as to be in the zenith. B is the south pole of the heavens, in the nadir. The line AB is the axis of the apparent revolution of the starry heavens in a perpendicular position. C is the north pole of the earth, D its south pole. The line CD, the axis of the earth, in perpendicular position and coincident with the corresponding portion of the axis of the starry heavens. The space III is the abode of the supreme god or gods. 2. Europe. 3. Asia. 4. Libya, or the known portion of Africa. 555. The ocean, or ocean stream. 666. The abode of disembodied spirits and rulers of the dead. 7777. The lowest hell. And this drawing is definitely not much for detail, but it's got an incredible structure, and I'm not exactly sure where this one came from, but ancient, mythological, it's who knows what the truth is. I'd like to represent it though, and may try. It is worthy of notice that the sight of portions of the south polar heavens, especially the starless region known as the black coal sack, is to this day capable of suggesting the associations of the bottomless pit. Thus, in a recent traveler's letter of the ordinary kind, we read, every clear evening we could see the Magellan clouds, soft and fleece-like, floating airily among the far-off constellations. These mysterious bodies look like star spray, or borrowed bits of the Milky Way. Then, too, our eyes would seek out, as by some strange fascination, those still more mysterious chambers of the south, the black hole sack with its retreating depths of darkness, wherein no star shines. These irregular spaces, emptinesses as it were, in the heavens, impress one with a sense of something uncanny, as though these were indeed the blackness of darkness forever. The Sunday School Times, Philadelphia, i883. Interesting. I've never heard of the black coal sack of stars, but wow. And that's probably black dark matter. They always try to create these terms that throw us off balance and throw years of people going down the wrong paths. They love that. But these old people I trust more than anyone from nowadays that is on TV or anything. Which brings me back to this map and this passage, which connects Tartarus with that kind of darkness and that gloomy Tartarus. Here we go. Take a look at this. Now to make this key a graphic illustration of Homeric cosmology, it is only necessary to write in place of 111, lofty Olympus, in place of 555, the ocean stream, in place of 666, the house of Hades, and in place of 7777, gloomy Tartaros. Imagine then the light as falling from the upper heavens, the lower terrestrial hemisphere therefore as forever in the shade. Imagine the Tartarian abyss as filled with Stygian gloom and blackness, fit dungeon house for dethroned gods and powers of evil. Imagine the men illuminating sun, the well-tressed moon, the central splendid stars, silently wheeling round the central upright axis of the lighted hemispheres, and suddenly the confusions and supposed contradictions of classic cosmology disappear. We are in the very world in which immortal Homer lived and sang. It is no longer an obscure crag in Thessaly, from which heaven-shaking Zeus proposes to suspend the whole earth and ocean. The eye measures for itself the 9 days' fall of Hesiod's brazen anvil, from heaven to earth, and from earth to Tartarus. The Hyperboreans are now a possibility. Now a descensus ad inferos can be made by voyagers in the black ship. Unnumbered commentators upon Homer have professed their despair of ever being able to harmonize the passages in which Hades is represented as beyond the ocean with those in which it is represented as, quote, subterranean. Conceive of man's dwelling place, of Hades, in the ocean as in this key, and the notable difficulty instantaneously vanishes. Interpreters of the Odyssey have found it impossible to understand how the westward and north around it revolve the visible heavens, and the stars nearest to it, that is, nearest to the pole, are supposed to be the abodes of the inferior gods and genii. To this day, the Taoists speak of the first person of their trinity as residing in the metropolis of Pearl Mountain, and in addressing him, turn their faces to the northern sky. A striking parallel to the Egyptian and Akkadian idea of two opposed polar mountains, an Arctic and Antarctic, the one celestial and the other infernal, is found among the ancient inhabitants of India. The celestial mountain they called Sumeru, the infernal one Kumeru. In the Hindu Puranas, the size and splendors of the former are presented in the wildest exaggerations of Oriental fancy. Its height, according to some accounts, is not less than 840,000 miles, its diameter at the summit 320,000. Four enormous buttress mountains, situated at mutually opposite points of the horizon, surround it. One account makes the eastern side of Meru of the color of the ruby, its southern that of the lotus, its western that of gold, its northern that of coral. On its summit is the vast city of Brahma, 14,000 leagues in extent. Around it, in the cardinal points in the intermediate quarters, are situated the magnificent cities of Indra and the other regions of the spheres. The city of Brahma in the center of the eight is surrounded by a moat of sweet-flowing celestial waters, a kind of river of the water of life, Ganga, which after encircling the city divides into four mighty rivers flowing towards four opposite points of the horizon and descending into the equatorial ocean, which engirdles the earth. Sometimes Mount Meru is represented as planted so firmly and deeply in the globe that the Antarctic or infernal mountain is only a projection of its lower end. Thus the Surya Siddhanta says, a collection of manifold jewels, a mountain of gold, is Meru, passing through the middle of the earth globe, Bhugola, and protruding on the other side. At its upper end are stationed along with Indra, the gods and the great sages, Maharishis. At its lower end, in like manner, the demons have their abode, each class the enemy of the other, surrounding it on every side is fixed. Next, this is great ocean, like a girdle about the earth, separating the two hemispheres of the gods and of the demons, conceiving of Meru in this way as a kind of core extending through the earth and projecting at each pole. One can easily understand the following passage in which two pole stars are spoken of instead of one. Quote, in both the two opposite directions from Meru are two pole stars fixed in the midst of the sky, as these mark the two opposite poles. The following description is from Lenormand. Like the Meru of the Indians, Harabarazaiti is the pole, the center of the world, the fixed point around which the sun and the planets perform their revolutions. Analogously to the Ganga of the Brahmins, it possesses the celestial fountain, Ardvisura, the mother of all terrestrial waters and the source of all good things. In the midst of the lake formed by the waters of the sacred source grows a single miraculous tree, similar to the jambu of the Indian myth, or else two trees, corresponding exactly to those of the biblical Gan Eden. There is the garden of Ahura Mazda, like that of Brahma on Meru. Thence the waters descend toward the four cardinal points in four large streams, which symbolize the four horses attached to the car of the goddess of the sacred source, Ardvisura Anahita. These four horses recall the four animals placed at the source of the paradisiac rivers in the Indian conception. This stuff is incredible. Every religion just has it pointing to something amazing up there that we're hidden from, of course. The Hellenic and Roman myths concerning the world mountain were numerous, but in later times not a little confused, as Ideler has learnedly shown. By some, as for example Aristotle, it was identified with the Caucasus, and it was asserted that its height was so prodigious that after sunset its head was illuminated a third part of the night, and again a third part before the rising of the sun in the morning. This identification explains the later legend according to which, in order to prove his rightful lordship of the world, Alexander the Great plucked the shadowless lance, parentheses, the Earth's axis, out of the topmost peak of the Taurus Mountains. More commonly, the mount is called Atlas, or the Atlantic Mountain. Proclus, quoting Heraclitus, says of it, its magnitude is such that it touches the ether and casts a shadow of 5,000 stadia in length. From the 9th hour of the day the sun is concealed by it, even to his perfect demersion under the earth. Strabo's account of it is full of the legendary features characteristic of an earthly paradise. The olive trees were of extraordinary excellence, and there were 7 varieties of refreshing wine. He informs us that the grape clusters were a cubit in length, and the vine trunks sometimes so thick that 2 men could scarcely clasp round one of them. Herodotus describes the mountain as very tapering and round, so lofty, moreover, that the top, they say, cannot be seen, the clouds never quitting it either summer or winter. The natives call this mountain the Pillar of Heaven, and they themselves take their name from it, being called Atlantis. They are reported not to eat any living thing, and never to have any dreams. Equally strange is the story told by Maximus Tyrius, according to which the waves of the ocean at high water stopped short before the sacred mount, standing up like a wall around its base, though unrestrained by any earthly barrier. Nothing but the air and the sacred thicket prevent the water from reaching the mountain. According to other ancient legends, a river of milk descended from this marvelous height. Noticing such curious stories, Pliny well describes the mountain as fabulosissimum. Awesome. So amazing. How can we go on and exist without figuring this out for certain? There's enough proof here to just make it be demanded that we figure this out for real and get proof. Otherwise, I don't believe anyone, and no one should. As the Celtic terrestrial paradise Avalon was a sea-girt island in the waters of the north, it could of course be reached only by ship. The first to accomplish this feat so far as Christian legend informs us was Saint Brandon, son of Finlaugo, a celebrated saint of the Irish Church who died AD 576 or 577. According to the story, an angel brought to this good abbot a book from heaven, in which such marvelous things were narrated concerning the then unknown portions of the world, that the honest father charged both angel and book with falsehood, and in his righteous indignation burnt the latter. As a punishment for his unbelief, God sentenced him to recover the book. He must search through hell and earth and sea until he finds the heavenly gift. The token given him by the angel is that when he sees two twin fire flames up, he shall know that they are the two eyes of a certain ox, and on the tongue of that ox he shall find the book. For 7 long years he sails the western and northern ocean. He here encounters more marvels than were recorded in the original incredible book, and is even permitted to visit the earthly paradise. The beauty of the soil, of the fountain with 4 streams, of the magnificent castle and castle halls lighted with self-luminous stones, and adorned with all manner of precious jewels, surpassed description. The stay of the party seems, however, to have been short, and unfortunately just where the island was located, the commander forgets to mention. The same isle is of blessedness is not less destitute of indications as to exact locality. Going some centuries farther back, we find another traveler who claims to have been in the terrestrial paradise. He says, "As I looked towards the north over the mountains, I saw 7 mountains full of precious balsam, and odorous trees, and cinnamon and pepper. And from thence I went over the summits of these mountains far towards the east, and passed on still farther over the sea, and came far beyond it. And I came into the garden of righteousness, and saw a many-colored crowd of trees of every kind, for many and great trees flourish there, very noble and lovely, and the tree of wisdom, which gives wisdom to anyone who eats of it. It is like the Johannesbread tree. Its fruit is like a cluster of grapes, very good, and the fragrance of the tree spreads far around. And I said, Fair is this tree, and how beautiful and ravishing its look. And the holy angel Raphael, who was with me, answered and said to me, This is the tree of wisdom, of which thy forefathers, thy hoary first parent and thy aged first mother, ate, and found the knowledge of wisdom, and their eyes were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they were driven out of the garden." The favored explorer who had the special advantage of being guided by a holy angel was the unknown author of the Book of Enoch, which writing is believed by some to be as old as the 2nd century before Christ. No one can read many chapters of his production, however, without arriving at the firm conclusion that sacred geography has very little to hope from such a source, however ancient. Very, very interesting. There's a lot of these stories that link up, and like I said, this book is just like an in-depth analysis of these ancient thoughts, and it does a really great job of piecing it all together. And there's so much more in the middle that I didn't include in this video, so I really encourage you all to check it out and include some other findings in the comments below. But here, a little bit more. Chapter 2, The Results of Theologians. Some have placed it in the 3rd heaven, some in the 4th, in the heaven of the moon, in the moon itself, on a mountain near the lunar heaven, in the middle region of the air, out of the earth, upon the earth, beneath the earth, in a place that is hidden and separated from man. It has been placed under the northern pole, in Tartary, or in the place now occupied by the Caspian Sea. Others placed it in the extreme south, in the land of fire, others in the Levant, or on the shores of the Ganges, or in the island of Ceylon. It has been placed in China, or in an inaccessible region beyond the Black Sea, by others in America, in Africa, etc. I think that's talking about Eden. And it really is true, it's been all over the place. Hitherto, then, the results of the theologians as to the location of Eden are purely negative and mutually destructive. It would be difficult, says one of their number, to find any subject in the whole history of opinion which has so invited and at the same time so completely baffled conjecture as this. Theory after theory has been advanced, but none has been found which satisfies the required conditions. The site of Eden will ever rank with the quadrature of the circle in the interpretation of unfulfilled prophecy among those unsolved and perhaps insoluble problems which possess so strange a fascination. And that is so true in a perfect way to conclude this video here today. The main point of all of this is that we don't know. We're still here now, claim to be so smart, and we have no idea. We have been led way more astray than these people when this book was done, when they were acknowledging explorers and ancient texts and things that are probably all now destroyed. We don't have that. We just have people telling us what to think, and people making fun of us if we think differently than them. And that's not the way it has to be. That's not the way people should be taught to think. Because if we're going down the path of thinking we're on this small enclosed prison of a dump, and there's nothing out there except infinite space, and we could be destroyed at any second, then we lose. Psychologically, we lose with that mentality. When we think that there could be gods, there could be so much more beyond our poles, that this place is massive, and we see all the evidence supporting it, we know and we feel everywhere, every part of our atomic body, we feel every bit of it, that we are being told lies and that the truth is superior by far. And I don't know about you all, but I'm even getting sick of entertaining the idea of a spherical, tiny Earth like these scientists tell. All of these things are just becoming so obviously pathetic and so wrong and so detrimental to the thinking of human thought in the present moment and time period that it's pathetic. They have successfully steered so much of science into a cult and away from what's actually provable fact, which is where it should never have strayed from. And people need to do it. Elon Musk, whoever, all these people, we need to demand that they take a camera, or they take one of their jets, one of their private jets, and they fly with a camera, and they prove to us that what they're saying and what they've been telling us and what we're teaching our kids is accurate. Because if it isn't, we need to change immediately. And why would we not want to know the truth? What are they hiding? That is the main thing. They are hiding so much about how important you are, how great and beautiful and immaculate and magical this world is, and so much more that we can't even fathom. And they don't deserve to know this. Like I said before, they are disgusting, and they're taking this knowledge and they're using it to harm us and using it to keep us down. We need to bring everyone up. Every single human, every single life form needs to flourish in the future, and will if we will it to, and we will. Bless you all.